At about 6:45 in the morning on June 16, 2024, a call reached the Grand Canyon Regional Communications Center. A hiker was unresponsive on the Bright Angel Trail, roughly half a mile east of the Pipe Creek River Rest House. He was 41 years old. He was hiking out of the canyon after an overnight stay at the Bright Angel Campground near Phantom Ranch. Bystanders tried. Park Service personnel tried. Nothing worked. Now hold the details, because the details are the whole story. He was moving before 7 in the morning, in the coolest hours of the day. He had slept overnight at the bottom. He was on the trail rangers actually recommend for the climb out. The previous day's high had reached the upper 80s. That morning's low was in the upper 50s. Warm, not extreme. He did, more or less, what the park tells you to do. The Park Service and the Coconino County Medical Examiner opened an investigation. No cause of death was ever released publicly. And here is what you cannot resolve on your own. By the park's own accounting, this was an ordinary year. Grand Canyon averages somewhere between about 15 and 17 deaths annually. Not a spike, a rate. This channel breaks down why specific places kill people, using the actual record eye, park mortality data, incident reports, peer-reviewed medicine. Subscribe if that's the version you want. By the end of this, you'll know what actually kills hikers here. It is almost never the thing they were afraid of. Start with the size of the thing. The National Park Service maintains a mortality data set, updated quarterly. From 2007 through the end of June 2024, it recorded 216 deaths in Grand Canyon National Park. 48 of those occurred during hikes. Be careful with that number, because I was. Other polls of the same data set give 185 deaths through 2023 and 225 through 2025. The Park Service says only calendar years 2014 through 2019 are fully validated, and that anything from 2020 onward is preliminary and subject to change. So the honest version is a range with a date attached, not a headline figure. Somewhere in the low 200s over roughly 18 years. Against what? Over 4.9 million recreation visits in 2024 alone. Run those against each other and the individual risk is genuinely small. Across the entire national park system in 2019, the mortality rate was 0.11 deaths per 100,000 recreational visits. An analysis of park data from 2007 to 2018 came out at just under 8 deaths per 10 million visits. That is the trick of this place, and of every place like it. A vanishingly rare event, multiplied by millions of people, stops being rare in aggregate. It becomes a schedule. The rescue numbers tell you more than the death numbers do. The park runs roughly 300 to 310 search and rescue incidents a year. In 2023, 302 incidents and 455 hikers assisted. The Park Service says over 250 people are rescued from the canyon annually. In 2018, Park Emergency Services logged 1,054 medical incidents, against a 10-year average of 1,067, and one location dominates below the rim. In 2018, Phantom Ranch alone generated 99 EMS incidents, more than anywhere else in the Inner Canyon. The Bright Angel Trail produced 57, South Kaibab, 29, North Kaibab, 11, 99, at a place with a canteen and a mailbox. That number is not a body count. It is a measure of where help gets summoned and delivered. Which raises the harder question. Why does a maintained trail to a staffed facility need that much help? Because of the geometry. Everything here comes back to the geometry. The South Kaibab Trail drops 4,860 feet, over 6.3 miles to the Colorado River. There is no water on it. The Park Service recommends you use it to go down only and take a different trail back up. The Bright Angel Trail drops 4,460 feet over 7.8 miles. Phantom Ranch sits at 9.9 miles in. The North Kaibab, from the other side, gives up 5,850 feet across 14.2 miles. Now the climate. The Park Service notes that the coolest, wettest weather station in the region, Dar, the North Rim, at 8,297 feet, sits less than 8 miles from the hottest and one of the driest. That second station is Phantom Ranch at 2,460 feet, 8 miles apart. Two different worlds, stacked vertically. Summer daytime temperatures in the Inner Canyon regularly exceed 110 degrees Fahrenheit. On exposed sections of trail, the Park Service says temperatures can pass 120 in the shade. During a 2023 excessive heat warning, the National Weather Service recorded 114 degrees at Phantom Ranch. Here's the thing your body does not account for. You start at the top in pleasant weather and you walk downhill into that. Descending is easy. It feels like nothing. Your legs are fresh, the air is cool, the views open up beneath you, and every step is a step you are not paying for yet. That is the inversion, and it is the single most important idea in this video. Michael Giglieri and Thomas Myers, whose fatality catalog remains the standard reference on deaths in this canyon, describe the Grand Canyon as an inverted mountain. On a mountain, exhaustion arrives at the summit, and the way home is downhill. Here, exhaustion arrives at the bottom, and the way home is a 4,000-foot climb into rising heat. Realize a mountain is beyond you, and you turn around into relief. Realize this canyon is beyond you and you are hot, low on water, and too spent to climb out. The park itself made the point on a corridor sign used through the 2000s. 6 words. Down is optional. Up is mandatory. Which brings us to what actually kills people here. And it is not what almost anyone walking down that trail is afraid of. Ask 100 people at the South Kaibab trailhead what could kill them down there, and you will get one answer, in slightly different phrasings. Running out of water, dehydration, dying of thirst under a 120-degree sun. It is the image the desert has in our heads, and the park's own signage leans into heat for good reason. The record says something else. Twice over, park data reported by NPR identifies cardiac arrest as the most common cause of death at Grand Canyon. An independent analysis of the Park Service mortality dataset found that Grand Canyon recorded more deaths from medical causes than any other unit in the entire national park system, 53 across the period covered. And system-wide, half of all medical deaths in national parks occurred while the person was engaged in a physical activity: hiking, biking, swimming. Now look at the park's own search and rescue accounting for 2018. Rescuers recorded 481 contributing factors across the year's caseload. The top one was not heat. It was fatigue and physical condition at 162. Second was insufficient information or error in judgment at 146. Falls, slips, and trips came in at 70. Heat appeared 82 times. Heat is real, and heat is everywhere in this story. But in the park's own data, heat is mostly the load. It is not usually the mechanism, and it is frequently not the words on the death certificate. So, what is the mechanism? Here is what almost nobody accounts for. Climbing out of the inner canyon asks your cardiovascular system to do 2 incompatible jobs at once. Your working legs need blood. Your skin needs blood, because in dry desert heat, moving warm blood to the surface and evaporating sweat off it is essentially your only cooling system. Those are the same blood. Meanwhile, the sweat that is keeping you alive is draining your plasma volume. Less fluid in circulation, 2 competing demands on it, and a heart rate that keeps climbing to try to satisfy both. If you are carrying an unrecognized coronary lesion, and plenty of otherwise healthy adults in their 40s, 50s, and 60s are, this is a sustained cardiac stress test conducted in a canyon with no exit ramp and no cardiologist. You cannot stop the test by stopping. You are still 5 miles and 4,000 feet from the top. The collapse, when it comes, usually comes late. On the ascent, hours after the person last felt fine. That is inversion number 1. The canyon takes your reserves on the easy half and presents the bill on the climb out. Inversion number 2 is stranger, and it involves the exact substance everyone tells you to carry more of. We'll get there. First, the numbers behind the quiet leader. In 2018 alone, Grand Canyon Emergency Services handled 11 sudden cardiac arrests. 3 of those patients survived to hospital release. A 27% survival rate, which, for cardiac arrests in a place where a defibrillator might be a helicopter ride away, is remarkable work by the people responding, and still means 8 people did not go home. The underlying risk is not exotic. Among 474 non-fatal heat illness cases recorded at Grand Canyon between 2004 and 2009, 18% of patients reported a cardiovascular condition. 18%. Roughly 1 in 5 people already sick enough to need a ranger was carrying a heart problem they knew about. Which brings us back to the man on the Bright Angel Trail on that June morning in 2024. I want to be precise here because the dossier for this video is precise. No cause of death was ever publicly released for him. I am not going to tell you he had a heart attack, and neither did anyone with access to the file. What I can tell you is what the circumstances were. He had rested overnight. He started before 7 in the morning. He was on the recommended trail. The weather was unremarkable. He was hiking out of the canyon, uphill, and half a mile from the river rest house he stopped responding. Everything about that is normal except the outcome. And this is why cardiac collapse is the most underestimated killer in the canyon. It does not look like a canyon death. It looks like a heart attack that happened to occur outdoors. It does not produce a dramatic headline because there is no villain in it, no flash flood, no cliff, no predator. Unlike heat, unlike a fall, it does not feel like something the environment did to you. But the environment chose the timing. It waited until you were 4,000 feet below the road, with the entire climb still ahead. Nobody packs for their own heart. Now the thing everyone does fear, which is dangerous in its own right, just not in the way advertised. Between 2004 and 2009, Grand Canyon EMS responded to 474 non-fatal and 6 fatal heat-related illness cases. That was nearly 9% of every EMS encounter in the park. Of the non-fatal cases, 51% were women. Median age, 43, range, 11 to 83. 90% were hiking, 40% required helicopter evacuation, and the highest rates were in May, not July. May, before the season's warnings feel urgent, and before anyone has acclimatized to anything. In 2018, the park logged 93 heat-related injuries. The peak across that decade was 148 in 2010. And in 1996, the park's record year, there were 5 heat-related deaths, 300 heat-related search and rescue incidents, and 482 total rescues. Here is how it kills. Sweating is your only meaningful cooling route in dry heat, and it fails on 2 fronts at once. Fluid loss shrinks the plasma volume you need to carry heat from your core to your skin, and the radiant load does not stop. Sun-heated rock keeps pushing energy into you even when you are technically in shade. As core temperature climbs past roughly 40 degrees Celsius, your central nervous system starts to degrade. Severe heat exposure raises brain temperature, reduces gray matter perfusion, suppresses motor cortical activity, and impairs executive function. Read that again, because it is the hinge of this entire video. The heat does not simply make you weak. It makes you weak and simultaneously worse at deciding what to do about being weak, which is why classic heat stroke in this canyon so often presents not as someone collapsing where they stand, but as a fall or as someone wandering off the trail. The rim is 4.5 to nearly 6,000 feet higher and dramatically cooler. You calibrate up there, you perform down here. Preventive search and rescue volunteers on those trails ask descending hikers a specific question. Do you know what the temperature is at Phantom Ranch? Most of them do not. And now the second inversion. This is the one I keep coming back to. Of those non-fatal heat-related incidents from 2004 to 2009, 19% were assessed as suspected hyponatremia. During the 1993 season, among Grand Canyon hikers seeking care for exercise-associated collapse or exhaustion, the reported incidence was 16%. In one study of summer hikers here, 7 of 44 patients whose blood was analyzed had clinically significant hyponatremia with sodium below 130 millimoles per liter. 3 of them had grand mal seizures. Hyponatremia is what happens when you drink too much water. Sweat carries sodium out of you. If you replace that loss with plain water and eat very little, your blood sodium falls. Then a second mechanism piles on. Intense exertion drives non-osmotic release of arginine vasopressin, a hormone that tells your kidneys to hold on to fluid, so you are diluting and retaining at the same time. Water follows the osmotic gradient out of your blood and cerebrospinal fluid and into your brain tissue. Your brain swells inside a skull that cannot expand. Untreated, death comes by herniation. The trap is diagnostic, and it is lethal. The early signs of hyponatremia overlap almost perfectly with heat illness. Nausea, headache, dizziness, confusion. So the patient, or their friends, reach the obvious conclusion and do the obvious thing. The correct field treatment is fluid restriction. The obvious thing is the opposite. On September 3, 2008, a previously healthy 47-year-old woman from London hiked about 10 kilometers on the South Kaibab Trail. She descended and reascended roughly 900 meters over 5 hours. The day was clear. It was around 10 degrees Celsius when she started at 8 in the morning and about 26.6 degrees when she finished near 1 in the afternoon. Her husband reported that she drank a large amount of water and ate very little. The actual amounts are unknown and were never established. She took a shuttle to Grand Canyon Village. At 2 in the afternoon, she collapsed on a sidewalk and quickly regained consciousness. Park Service EMS reached her within 8 minutes. Her Glasgow coma score was 15 days, fully alert. 30 minutes later, during transport, she vomited a large volume of clear fluid and stopped responding. Imaging at the hospital showed severe cerebral edema with impending herniation and no evidence of trauma. Her admission serum sodium was 127. She was pronounced dead at 8:38 the next morning, less than 19 hours after she collapsed. The physicians who published the case believe it is the first documented fatality from exercise-associated hyponatremia in a hiker anywhere in the world. 5 hours, 26 degrees. She never reached Phantom Ranch, and she never went below the rim zone weather. The Park Service has quietly rewritten its guidance to match this science. Its preventive search and rescue program now states plainly that the old advice, half a liter to a liter of water per hour, is scientifically unsupported. Drink when thirsty, eat salty food, do not force fluids. That is the exact inverse of what most people believe they know about the desert. If you have ever walked past a trailhead warning sign because you felt fine at the time, tell me in the comments. I am genuinely curious how many of us have. And drop a like if this is making you reconsider a trip you had half planned. Because the part most people get wrong is still coming, and it is not about water at all. It is about what the canyon does to your judgment before you notice. Falls, slips, and trips were the third-ranked contributing factor in the park's 2018 rescue caseload, appearing 70 times among 481 recorded factors. Park-wide, 48 people died in falls between 2007 and 2025, an average of 2.7 a year, with men roughly 1.8 times more likely than women. But be careful with that figure, and I will be careful with it too. Park-wide fall deaths are dominated by the rim, which is an entirely different phenomenon. People go over the edge at overlooks. That is not what happens on the corridor. Corridor falls are rarely dramatic. They are the terminal event of a physiological failure that started an hour earlier. Remember what heat does to motor cortical activity and executive function. Now put that person on loose tread, on a trail with a several hundred-foot consequence at mile 6, tired. In a 2026 corridor fatality on the Bright Angel Trail, officials assessed that the hiker was experiencing heat-related illness before the fall and that the illness may have been the contributing factor. The fall was the last event. It was not the cause. We file falling under cliff edges and photographs. We do not file it under the trail we are already standing on, 3 hours in, feeling slightly off. There is no published count of deaths from this in the canyon, so I am not going to imply there is one. What there is a mechanism, and it is the most quietly ironic thing in the entire file. Walking downhill damages you. Repetitive descent produces eccentric muscle loading, your quadriceps lengthening under tension thousands of times for 4,000 vertical feet. In deconditioned people especially, that can progress to exertional rhabdomyolysis, skeletal muscle breaking down and releasing myoglobin and creatine kinase into the bloodstream. In severe cases, it produces acute compartment syndrome and acute kidney injury. The descent to Phantom Ranch, the half everybody thinks is free, is precisely the loading event that seeds it. And the timing is cruel. Rhabdomyolysis symptoms are typically delayed 24 to 72 hours. So the damage you did going down surfaces the following morning at the bottom, when your entire remaining task is to climb out. Nobody believes gravity is charging them on the way in. It is. Causes 6 through 8. The contrast beat. Approximately 150 words. Just light. Quickly, 3 things that are not killing hikers here, because knowing what is absent sharpens what is present. Wildlife. In 2018, the park logged 6 animal bite EMS incidents, and animals appeared as a contributing factor in 7 rescues across the year. Fatalities identified in the record, none. Cold. In that same year, 2 hypothermia EMS cases against 93 heat illness cases. In the rescue contributing factor data, cold appeared 6 times. Heat, 82. It is a real winter risk on the upper switchbacks, and it is not the story. Water in the drowning sense. Park-wide, 23 deaths since 2007 involve swimming or vessel use, mostly drownings, and the high-profile flood fatalities in this canyon cluster and side canyons, not the corridor. There is no sourced Phantom Ranch flood fatality I could verify, so I am not going to borrow one. The things you would photograph are not the things that get you. Here's where it gets worse, and it gets worse because these mechanisms do not sit in separate boxes. They stack. Walk the sequence. You descend in the cool morning, feeling excellent, and the eccentric loading is already accumulating microscopic damage in your legs. You reach the bottom, where it is 20 to 30 degrees hotter than the trailhead you left. You have been sweating steadily and losing sodium, so you drink more water because that is what everyone told you to do, and you eat less than you should because heat suppresses appetite. You sleep badly. You start up at 4 or 5 in the morning to beat the heat, on legs that are now measurably damaged and blood that is now measurably diluted. The climb demands cardiac output. Your skin demands cardiac output. Your plasma volume is down. Your core temperature rises. Your executive function begins to degrade quietly, without announcing itself. And every single one of those variables is worse than it was 12 hours ago, at the exact moment the terrain gets steepest. That is the inverted mountain. It is not that the canyon has one big lethal thing in it. It is that the canyon systematically strips your margin for error on the half that feels free, so that an ordinary mistake on the way out, 1 hour too late, one salty snack skipped, one warning sign walked past, becomes the mistake that finishes it. Down is optional. Up is mandatory. And by the time up becomes mandatory, you are not the same person who chose to go down. Which leaves one question. If your body is failing on a predictable schedule, why doesn't your brain simply notice and stop? Because your brain is one of the things that is failing. This is the part I cannot get past. In controlled experiments, passive heat stress that raised core temperature by about 1.3 degrees Celsius reduced cerebral perfusion and impaired both executive processing and inhibitory processing on go/no-go testing. Executive processing is deciding to act. Inhibitory processing is deciding not to. And here's the detail that stays with me. Response inhibition remained impaired even after whole-body cooling had returned participants to normal temperature. Separately, passive hyperthermia has been shown to measurably worsen complex executive function tasks while leaving simple attention tasks intact. Translate that into a person on the South Kaibab Trail at 11 in the morning. They can still walk, they can still talk, they can still answer a ranger's questions coherently, and they will pass, to any observer including themselves, as fine. What they have specifically lost is the faculty required to stop. The park's own data agrees. In 2018, error in judgment or insufficient information was recorded in 146 rescues, second only to fatigue and well ahead of heat itself. Then add the environment's disguise. Phantom Ranch has lodging, a canteen, a ranger station, a clinic. The park added a wound closure procedure to its 2018 medical protocols specifically for that clinic. The corridor is signposted, with drinking water, toilets, emergency phones, and ranger stations at intervals. All of that is real, and all of it is good, and it teaches your brain the wrong lesson. Your brain reads infrastructure as management. It concludes, people run this. This must be fine. It is not a managed environment. It is a wilderness with amenities in it. The Park Service says this about its own visitors, plainly. Many of the people who request help on an inner canyon hike underestimated how difficult the hiking is, especially in summer, and may also have overestimated their own abilities. In one documented 2016 case here, a hiker in serious trouble and his companions collectively concluded he had heat illness. He was encouraged to drink more fluid. His actual problem was hyponatremia, and more fluid was the one thing that could make it worse. A group of people, together, confidently doing the thing that was harming him. And finally, the sunk cost is built into the terrain itself. On a mountain, doubt is cheap. You turn around and go downhill. Here, doubt is expensive. Turn around halfway to the river and you still owe the entire climb. The descent commits you before you have any information about whether you should be committed. So you get into trouble. Help comes. That is the assumption, and the Park Service has written down, in public, that you should not make it. The park states that when hiking in the inner canyon, self-rescue is required, because immediate assistance may not be available. Hikers must be prepared to handle emergencies on their own, carrying sufficient water, food, and first aid, knowing their physical limits, and having a plan to get back to the rim. It goes further. The park warns that assistance may be delayed in summer due to limited staff, the sheer number of rescue calls, employee safety requirements, and limited helicopter flying capability during extreme heat. Sit with that last one. Hot, thin air degrades a helicopter's lift. The aircraft performs worst on precisely the days the most people need it, and demand does not rise gradually. Park Service analysis compared inter-canyon weather data against hiker assists on the Bright Angel and South Kaibab trails and found a threshold at 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Below it, 6.1 heat-related assists per 1,000 hiker contacts. At or above it, 10.4, a 71% increase, statistically significant. The Park Service's own search and rescue branch chief separately put the jump in distress calls at around 60% once canyon temperatures hit 95. Two independent measurements of the same cliff edge. When help does come, it is slow by physics. Of 300 rescue methods logged in 2018, 164 were helicopter evacuations, 85 were rescuers on foot, and 17 were litter carryouts, a multi-hour haul by multiple people up thousands of vertical feet. Even after the rim, it is a long way. In that 2008 hyponatremia case, the nearest hospital emergency department was 128 kilometers and an hour and a half away by road, and the crew ultimately diverted to an air ambulance meeting them 48 kilometers south of the village. And legally, none of it is guaranteed. A 1992 10th Circuit decision, Johnson versus the U.S. Department of the Interior, held that search and rescue is a discretionary function of government. No statute imposes a duty to rescue. Whether, when, and how is left to the judgment of the team. So the park does the only thing that actually scales. It tries to stop you before you go. In 2018, preventive rangers and volunteers logged 118,000 general contacts, 22,000 preventive actions, and 592 hiker assists across 4,500 patrol hours. In summer 2015, of 117,000 people contacted, 28,000, 24% say, needed some form of corrective advice. Roughly 1 in 4 hikers heading down needs correcting before they even reach the hard part. So who is it? Because I suspect you have a picture in your head and the data does not support it. Median age of heat illness patients here, 43. Range, 11 to 83. Across the park system, more than half of all deaths occur among people 45 and older, and Park Service data indicated most 2014 rescue calls involved men above 50. Sex splits by cause, sharply. 51% of non-fatal heat illness patients were women. Heat illness is not a male phenomenon, but 79% of park system deaths are male, and men die in falls here at nearly twice the rate. Now the finding that matters most. A study of 617 rim-to-rim day hikers found a median age of 43, 65% male, and 46% who had already completed the crossing before, a median of 3 times previously. Nearly half of the people attempting the hardest version of this route had done it. Repeatedly. Successfully. At the other end of the spectrum, the 2016 case I mentioned involved a deconditioned man with a body mass index of 36.5, on no medications, otherwise healthy. He nearly died. Both ends of the fitness distribution are represented, which tells you fitness is not the variable it feels like. The invisible burden is medical. 18% of non-fatal heat illness patients reported a cardiovascular condition. At least a quarter had known heat illness risk factors, cardiovascular, endocrine, and nearly 40% were on prescription medication for those conditions. The Park Service notes directly that pre-existing conditions compound the physical stress. And where are they? On the main trails. Of 260 rescue subjects in 2018, 96 were day hiking and 52 were overnight hiking. 191 were unaffiliated visitors, not commercial tours, not organized groups. Individuals and small parties on the best-maintained trails in the park. So the profile is not a reckless outlier. It is a moderately fit adult somewhere in their 40s or 50s on a sign-posted trail with a plan and a water bottle and probably some prior experience, who was about 15% wrong about themselves. 15% is not a character flaw. 15% is a rounding error most of us carry every day without consequence. The canyon is just a place where that rounding error gets billed. The canyon is not hunting anyone. That is the thing that has stayed with me through all of this. It does not know you started at 6 in the morning. It does not know you trained, or that you have done this 3 times before, or that you are half a mile from the rest house. It does not adjust. It simply keeps doing what a mile-deep hole in the desert does, running cool at the top, hot at the bottom, easy on the way in, and steep on the way out. Down is optional. up is mandatory. And for somewhere between 15 and 17 people a year, that indifference is the last thing they meet. Phantom Ranch is not a trap. It is a beautiful, legitimate destination that most people reach and leave safely. The fact I cannot shake is the 99 EMS incidents in 1 year at a place with a canteen, because that is not wilderness statistics. That is a busy clinic at the bottom of a hole. Which mechanism surprised you most, and which place should I take apart next? Tell me below. Subscribe for more breakdowns of why these places actually kill.